substance. The fear of handcuffs leads to the fear of police, the fear of dogs, the fear of prisons. The fear of strip searches leads to the fear of being naked in front of other women. The fear of keys leads to the fear of chains. The fear of small spaces, it leads to the fear of tears, the fear of dreams, the fear of loneliness. The fear of being forgotten, it leads to the fear of time, the fear of lies. The fear of metal doors leads to the fear of dark, empty corridors. The fear of insanity leads to the fear of separation, the fear of isolation, the fear of segregation, the fear of being a statistic.
As I said, they can actually show you much better than I can tell. Expressive writing is just one way of helping women articulate their life experience and enabling them to heal from what's happened to them and to deal with a world that is still very oppressive of women. And I lived through the women's liberation movement in the 60s and 70s. People now would say that we're post-feminist, women are equal. That's just not true. And when you look at the intersection too of sexism with racism, with poverty, with lesbian identity, you just get, things just become just heavier and heavier for women. And I'm just going to do a very quick skim through just some facts. 26% of MPs are women, and the proportion gets less if you think about black women and other minority ethnic women. Young women are being sexualized out of all proportion nowadays, and the sex industry is being mainstream. Things that now are just everyday things were absolute, shocking porn when I was younger, and we're just kind of, being subjected to this all the time. Women live longer than men, so it means we live longer in poverty, and 2 women are killed every week by their male partner or by their ex-partner. 2 women every week. Women are usually seen as the problem. I saw a great film recently, it's called Iron-Jawed Angels. It's the Hollywood version of what happened to the English suffragettes. And I love one of the lines in it. One of the characters says, "Courage in a woman is often confused with insanity." I think it's a very telling quote. So women tell their stories in many ways, not just, through poetry. And they're not always in straightforward ways that women will tell a story. The editor of Women in Prison magazine told me recently that she gets hundreds of poems every month sent to her, and that women will write at the bottom, "I've never told anyone this before." It's like they can say it in a poem, but they can't say it in any other way. And this was a book that I put together. It's just very recently come out. It's Poetry and Life Story by Women in Prison with Self-Harm. And I've been going into women's prisons and doing workshops on the basis of it. And this was, I think, maybe the best poem that's been written, in my view, by Rachel. And this is how she describes herself and why she self-harms. "My arms are a canvas to write upon, a blank piece of paper to a pen. My life is mapped out on these arms. I can trace the hurt along raised red scars, scars that run deep. They took my heart, my soul, my innocence, my all. And this I wrote upon my arms in the hope that you would understand, that you would see the hurt inside, beneath my cut and broken skin, and see the beauty buried within." And I just say lastly that in order to tell, I think this is true for men too, I'm not just saying this for women, but for us to tell our stories, we often need to show the underpinning emotions. You'll see with Alison, it was healing for her to be able to cry, to be able to actually hear what it is that she committed to the paper. And, women, I think it's a good workshop I run if women are able to show the tears, the grief, the fears, the anger. And of course, prisons are not a good place to do that, understandably. I mean, if everyone was just being able to show their emotions all the time, the prison wouldn't be able to run the regime in the way it does. But, you know, unfortunately, if a woman cries too much, she will be put on observation. She will be put on an act book. She'll be looked at in a particular way. She'll be accompanied around the prison with officers. If a woman gets too angry, she will be put in seclusion, in segregation. And at that very moment where what's needed is a touch, or is looking in someone's eyes to see there's someone else there, often that's the time when you're segregated. And I'm a very big believer in mental health liberation. I think in this society we've got it wrong when we pathologize people. But there was one woman who will stay with me forever. She was put into seclusion, waiting to be taken to a high security unit. And she screamed for 24 hours non-stop, for days upon days. She screamed into that big quadrangle. She screamed, "Is there anybody there? And can you help me?" And I thought, there speaks sanity. I mean, what a fantastic response to being in seclusion. Is there anybody there? Can you help me? And the answer, even the answer doesn't come back, no. So I'm going to end with just one of my poems. It's a poem that I often do in prison, for women and for men. It comes out of my story, being a daughter of a Holocaust survivor, but I think our stories are particular as well as unique, and it's so often the women will get something from my story. And for me, I always think change is possible. I think everybody is reachable. I don't think there's anyone who isn't reachable. So I'm just going to do this, and then that's my time. I can't do this, she says. I don't do this, she says. And then she does. No, I don't dance, she says. I only look like a dancer, she says. And then she dances. And the body stretches and fills the space that is hers, that she thought she could never have again. She sees there is no straitjacket, only the tightness of self-criticism, and the constant searching for the criticism of others to prove, I can't do this, I don't do this. And then she does. She has flesh. As her hair grows, she leaves the Holocaust behind forever. I can't, she says. I don't, she says. Yet she does. She falls back into water, leans against unseen energies, allows unknown hands to rest on her. I can't trust, she says. I don't trust, she says. And she does. Life was never meant to be like this, she says. I wasn't supposed to be close to you, she says. I can't love, she says. I don't love, she says. And she does.
Thank you so much. Film is just, I just want to cry every time I see it. We're going to take questions in 5 minutes, and Mushtaq is going to do that. But I just wanted to say, this is kind of the dream team, really, isn't it? I've just noticed the Deputy Mayor of Kensington and Chelsea, thank you so much for coming. We have our security and police liaison people, if they would actually ever talk to us. It's handled by a company called Sectec, which have a lot of experience. Bobby and Colin offer advice daily, by minute, on kind of managing relationships within NOMS and probation and how to do this. Tony brings so much business experience and has taken this from a tiny little idea to something that is flourishing and viable and is going to happen. Mushtaq is kind of just this great man. It's like this avalanche behind us. It's like being pushed down a hill really fast. And thank you so much for the impetus and the support. And Susan and Leah and Isla, I mean, God, it's like feminism in action. It's fantastic and it's so great. And thank you for what you bring. And Charlotte is just so sensible and grounded. And it's all about outcomes. So we're learning. But I just wanted Bobby and Colin just to speak for a couple of minutes, each of us, okay? Bobby Cummins is the Chief Executive of Unlock, which is the rehabilitative...
No, the National Association of Schools. I've heard some wonderful things, I've got to say, that poem moved me. Angela Davis once said, in the Soledad Brothers, a poet, sometimes I think this whole world is just one big prison yard where some of us are prisoners and the rest of us are guards. And when we look at the women in our society, the men have always been the guards and the women have always been the prisoners. And I think as women in this society, the way we treat them over generations and generations, as a man we need to apologise for the abuse we've made them go through. As mothers, as daughters, as wives, we need to say sorry. And so on behalf of the male gender, and for me, I apologise to you women for the oppression you've suffered for all these hundreds of years. And I think you deserve it. What we need to look at is what we're missing out. There are women here that have raised their children. There are women here that have been our daughters, that have been our grandmothers. And do we love them and respect them? Yeah, we do, but we don't treat them right. We don't give them the equal opportunity that we should do. And I think it's very important that, you know, as an ex-offender myself, I served 30 years out of 20. And when you talk about solitary confinement, my friend Colin here can vouch me. I did 2 years in solitary confinement, a Cat A prisoner, and they classed me as one of the most dangerous men in prison. But he's my pal now. You know, this guy, he's my person, to love me up, and he's a good man. What we've got to look at is about what we do with women in society and what we need for women in society. People talk about, you know, we've got to empower women and all that. Women are powerful anyway. They bring up their children, they keep their rights. They're a lot more organised than we are, for one. Right? Secondly, they're a lot more intelligent than we are because they run the budgets. If we had women running the country instead of men, we wouldn't be in the crack we're in now. And I'm completely correct, okay? So there's a lot of intelligent women out here, but we don't respect our women. We don't treat our women with respect. And as a society, we don't respect our women with respect. All the things in women's prisons are designed by men. Alright? The prison regime is designed for a male regime. The women are an add-on bit. Okay? It's an add-on bit. There are women in there that are being abused, that are never meeting their full potential, they're slashing their wrists, they're hanging themselves, they're taking drugs in there. Who makes women prostitutes? Men make women prostitutes. Who make women thieves? Men make women thieves. So, and I'm saying this as a man, and do you know something? It makes me ashamed. I'm a patron of a woman's project up in Walsall, where it's women who've been on the streets and on heroin, and they bring them off the streets. And you know something? I'm so proud that they've got a 98% success rate of getting these women back into college, fulfilling their full potential and becoming law-abiding citizens, taxpayers rather than a burden on the taxpayer. Okay? That's what our women are worth. Our women in this world, to me, are diamonds. And do you know what a diamond is? It's something that's tough, it shines, and it's priceless. That's what women are to me, do you know? And I'm really proud to be able to stand up to men and say to these women, I'm sorry I let you down. We look at where women let us down in society. So this woman's committed a crime. I don't look at it like that. Whereas we as a society have let these women down, that we bang up in prison. That's what we're doing wrong. We bang women up for our mistakes in society. We need to support these women. And I'm saying to you today, I'm proud to be part of this. I'm not politically correct, as everyone knows. They've seen me on television. You get a lot of bleeps when I'm on the box. All right? But the thing is, I believe in what these people are doing. Farah's got a massive heart. She's committed to what she's doing. What the programme is here is doing. We get things from the Home Office. KPIs, key performance indicators. KPTs, key performance targets. They're designed by KP nuts up in the office, all right? So yeah, don't worry about them. They read about our life and they have the audacity to tell us about our life. We as ex-offenders live that life. It's our kids that are dying on the streets, it's our mothers that are grieving on the streets, it's our mothers that are coming out of prison, our daughters that are dying of heroin overdoses, our daughters are being abused and put into prostitution. It stops now. I don't want to look up to a woman, I don't want to look down to a woman, I want to look in her eye and her to be my equal and me to be her equal. And I think the only way we're going to solve these problems is stop having male domination, stop designing things for men and trying to fit women into them, to see women as equal human beings, respect them as equal human beings, the same as you would your mother or your daughter or your wife. And I say, when we do that, Dave, then we've got it right. Stop the bullshit. Sorry about that rubbish recorded in Parliament. Stop the bullshit, start telling the truth, start respecting women and start looking at the women's regime. And it's not just about banging them up. What are you going to do How are you going to pay them back? It's like with the Black Nation. I've read this, it's got the third world. So you're not even first class, you're not second class. The male first class, women second class. Now hold up, we've got a third world. You're on the third class train, so on the priority scale, you're down there. No, you're human beings, you're entitled to decency, you're entitled to respect, and you're entitled to be not intolerant, but in equality. And that's what I want for people today, and that's what I want in prisons, and I want to see people coming out of prisons with a hope, a dream, and a future. And I want them to put their money where their mouth is. Right, crime costs us £47,500 a year, right? Kazuri can do it half the price, and you ain't got people back in jail, and we can give them a dream, and we can give them a future. Right, I wrote down here, right, wages. We talked about purposeful activity. My mate Nick is here, and also my dear friend Marilyn's here, whose father's Tommy we speak. Great train robber, and she's a lovely lady, this lady, okay? I can speak because she's one of my own, okay? So we've got good people here today, okay? And what I'm saying to you is this. I believe that prisoners should go to prison who are dangerous, not go to prison because they've got problems. We can deal with that in the community. Most women's crimes we can deal with in the community. In fact, I don't even think women should be banned up unless they're completely lunacy. And then they could go in lunatic asylums where they can be treated, not in prisons where they can be brutalised. Okay? So what I'm saying to you is this. I think people should go in prisons. People should invest in prisons. Outside influences should invest in prisons. They should be trained for work, not laying in bed, cutting their wrists and doing things like trained for work. A third of that money could go to the victims of crime, to pay back for retribution of the crimes they committed. A third of that could go to their family to get them off the dole instead of them becoming dole addicts. And a third of that could be paid towards their rehabilitation so they come out with a trained workload and become law-abiding citizens, taxpayer, not a burden on the taxpayer. That is what I promote for prisoners. And secondly, we also about how wonderful England is. I would remind you, in the Boer War, it was England who designed concentration camps for the Boers, okay? And we've been exploiting black countries for hundreds of years. In fact, we are, and I'm an OBE now, so I can say that, don't I? You know, OBE, Officer of the British Empire, or old buggers' efforts, if you want to call it that way. But I would say that we've been robbing and plundering people for thousands of years, and so have other countries as well. You know, we're not that great, it's about time, it's payback time now. And we can start with our women, and we can start with the black nations that we've robbed. Third world, because we plundered and robbed them. So let's start putting a bit back in. And thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I think this is a wonderful organisation. I totally endorse it, and it'll have my full support. And I can pull up for this government, and I've met the government, I've told Lord McNally, £5.3 billion of private investment, but we'll only invest in what's right. And that's from my private investors, not government money. Unlock does not take government money. I don't take the man's shilling, and I don't see the man's song. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Colin Russell. I'll stay sitting, but I'll stand up a little bit. I'm looking down on Bobby, which I do. My name is Colin Moses. Until recently, I was the national chairman of the Prison Officers Association. So that makes me a guard, doesn't it? I've been a guard for 25 years. Never bothered me. Never bothered me being a guard. Bobby talks about I work for the state. The majority of people in this country who work in prisons work for the state. Does that make the state right? This is the state until recent times locked up more women than anywhere else in Western Europe. Somebody woke up one day and said, oh, we're looking up all these women. And you know, we discovered there's a process called re-rolling. Sounds like something you do when you're baking. Well, that means when you turn a prison from a male prison to a female prison. So what do you do? What do you do when you turn a male prison to a female prison? You move out all the men. You move in all the women. And then you look at how many staff you've got. That's all you do. That shows one size fits all, doesn't it? That tells you so much. I heard someone say earlier that Close Holloway. Well, I haven't been able to agree with that one, I could agree with that. But what I would say is if you're going to close Holloway, you should maybe look at Holloway as the worst example of a system that's broken down. We have the, what's London now? third, fourth largest city in the world. How many people live here? 11 million? How many of them are women? You have one prison. How many male prisons are in London? How many? Really? That's right. You want to keep on going up? Wormwood Scrubs, all heard of that? Wandsworth? Brixton? You want to go on? Come on, you want to shout tomorrow? Bentonville? Belmarsh? Young Offenders? Felton? So we've got a society that says, what, we have one female prison. So what should that tell us? We don't intend to send many people in London to prison. That's not the case at all. And then if you look at the makeup of some of the things I've heard tonight really filled me with awe. As someone who's been in prisons a long, long time, it's strange how poetry is the gateway for many, many people. And if you could have a library, even if there's a library here in the House of Parliament, you should get all the books written by those who served time in prison. And some of the magical words that would come out of there, and you'd see many of them repeated. Because most people actually, when they sit on their own, they do like. And most women sit on their own, cry. And you want to hear something in prison when you shut the doors. You have to climb under the doors. Listen for the tears. That's what it makes. That's what's never captured on TV programs such as Bad Girls or anything else. Listen for the tears. That's when you know. But prison, what do we want from prison? Great debate currently, isn't it? I feel very strange. I agree with what Kazoo is doing now. I also believe that prison shouldn't be for profit. But I think we can make profit work and make prison better. With a distinction. It's got to be a distinction there. And something that you should all think about those who haven't been in prison yet. Maybe some of you are. There's an area when you go to a prison called the reception. Anybody ever been to prison yet? Here, I don't go to the reception. Go to the reception. Anybody tell me where the discharge is? Who really designed that? Who designed it? So what actually discharge is a big gate that you put thrown out over a black building. That's how good the system is. We've got this massive idea with that reception process we put through it. Strip search. So we've sat here and talked, and I'm very interested in the figures of people who've been traumatized. Well, anyone who's ever been strip searched anyway is traumatized. Because what happens if you don't want to strip search? What happens if you don't want to take your clothes off? And you just walk away and say, oh, by the way, I'm not taking my clothes off. I'm going to stand here in my clothes and I'm not going to search me. Is that how it works? Is this a hotel we're going and everybody gets to take it? They're traumatized from the moment they come in. They're traumatized. You know these vans you see rolling along the roads? You know, in the front, they've got circle or before or lying on. They're not horse boxes. They're carrying human beings. Many of them should be a woman who gets out of court in the morning. You may be in that van for a very, very long time. That doesn't traumatize you. What will it? You go to a place that currently in the prison service, those who are employed in uniform are represented the majority of them to receive. 34% of them are female. That's those who work in prisons. I'm sure you're going to find 34% of them in a female jail. We have a system that's been said time and time again that's been designed by men. I listened carefully to people talking about the Courson report. We've been looking at how to make female prisons better. I'm not talking about ancient history here. 1987, I was in the prison service then. Yeah, I was. 1987, we had a thing called cross-sex employment. That's when men would go and work in female prisons, and females would go and work in men's prisons. That's not that lifetime for some reason, yeah, it's not that horrible. That's how we do. Whether it be Lord Ramsbotham or anyone else Colson or anyone else who's coming up to prisons said, why is it that these are the same rules apply to a female prison? I visited, some people describe me in the past as a sort of prison tourist. I visited every prison in the United Kingdom. Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland. I've also visited many prisons in Northern Ireland, France, Israel. One of the most, and I've seen many harrowing things, both as a prison officer and as a leader of the unit. But one of the most harrowing things I've seen was a New Old prison. And I was in an office, and there was a set of screens, not much like this. And I was talking, as I often do. Someone came up on the screens, it was a removal from a cell, from a closed cell. And it was a lady completely naked, who had only been released 4 days previously, and had come back. Arrested, released, she didn't want to leave. She'd been rearrested in an Asda supermarket in the toilet, where she had stolen a bottle of vodka and was drinking it. It wasn't hiding, it was drinking it. And they arrested her. She wanted to be arrested to go back to prison. Well, they should have taken that. My view, I'm not a conviction, I'm not a was to somewhere where she would be mentally held. Instead of it, she was in the block. And she was being unlocked with 1 and 4. That's 1 senior officer, 4 officers. Because she was so violent. Yes, she would have been violent. Took me to your story about someone shouting for help. Her help was very violent, very large lady. She was naked. And all among those were 2 men. Apparently, it was men there, because of people there, who were going to fight her. And they did that every day, every time they opened up. There's a horrible expression for those who've been in prison. Are you mad or are you bad? Or are you sad? I don't care what you are, but you shouldn't be treated like that. And staff shouldn't have to treat someone like that. And that's a society that contends itself as the 6th richest in the world. Gave the world from freedom from slavery, gave the world suffragettes. This isn't a lifetime ago, this is 3-4 years ago. We lock up, and I also keep talking about England, and you have to look at how many black, Asian, ethnic minority women we lock up in this country, but not just that. How many people we have in our female prisons who are waiting to be deported, who shouldn't be in prison at all. And everybody brings up this lovely story and says, oh, but they're all mules. They're not all mules at all. Are people who have actually been arrested in this country, some of whom have lived in this country for many, many years. This is their country to all intents and purposes, and they find themselves criminalized and very much traumatized, waiting to be deported. Some of whom, unfortunately, in the system we have, the country they've been deported to, they may have left when they were only children themselves. That is the sort of backdrop you have. In this, we must move away from this terrible assertion that everyone who's in prison is in for some, being a prostitute or a shoplifter. And if you think we created, it cost us millions of pounds to create NOMS. And those who don't know what that is, it's National Offender Management Services. National Offender. So everyone who goes in there must be an offender, even if they've not been convicted. Well, 11,000 people in the country who have never been convicted, they're on remand prisoners. We have 250,000 churned in our prisons. So you've got 3 friends. Can I ask for a show of hands? Anybody in the room has got 3 friends? Put your hand up if you've got 3 friends. Come on, don't be shy. I've only got 2, it's all right. Put your hand up. So you would hope that if you went to prison, 3 people would come and visit you, wouldn't you? Yeah, you would hope that, wouldn't you? So do your maths. 87,000 multiplied by 3. That's how many people can be just affected by those. I'm going to round up now, yeah? Now I'm the one sending a message, you know, what to get away with. If you, I make it simplistic as that. What isn't happening in this country is a true debate on prisons. What we get is headlines. I've been part of those headlines. Does prison work? Does it not work? Prison does not work for everyone. Prison works. Whether you go to a society where people are washed ashore, unfortunately, and you read any books, people create a stockade. First thing that people did when they landed on the rock, or the rock landed on them, when they went to the United States, they created a stockade. If you read about Aztec times, they created a prison. It doesn't mean a break. It's not about the creation of a prison, it's about who you send to it. It's the amount of people, and when we've got a country that in prisons, more women, and we actually have this other wonderful thing which I have to touch on, called, I spent today with you in a very large school in Newham, the job I'm doing now for a charity, and it's called Prison May No Way. And someone asked about mother and baby units. It's from a 14-year-old girl. She says, is it true that children are born in prison? Yes, there is. Because there's another fact we should be very proud of. We have more people born in prison here than anywhere else in Western Europe as well. Because we have this wonderful creation, which everyone thinks is great, called mother and baby units. So I'm rounding up now. What message is that? I have to stop now. I could go on forever more. But the reality is, we have too many people, we have too many women in prison, and we are doing nothing about it. And one thing we are doing, what this group will do, is most of those will come out being homeless. That's what we have to stop. Thank you. I'm never going to talk on Facebook again.
Thank you very much, Colin, and everybody. Now it is time for you to speak, but let me give you two information. Number one is an invitation card. Pick it up. Leah Thorne book will be discussed, and some of the prisoners who have written the poems will be reading their poems in next door room, which is called Grimmett Room. An invitation is here. You can pick it up. Tomorrow, Third World Solidarity is having a meeting on the Commonwealth Where Next, reflection on the eminent person group review, which is out, and Sir Malcolm Rifkin, QC, will be speaking with Ellen Hazelhurst. Anybody who wants to come, there is an invitation there. So any questions or comment from you, because now this is your time. Madam, say your name and then question or comment up to you.
I'm Marilyn Weasley, author of a book that was published 2001. I work for women in prison, GLADA, around drinking and drugs, and I do a lot of community work for my local town hall. I don't want to name the name, but just one thing, Susan, I really respected what you said, and you know, I can see where you're coming from. There's a lot of, I just want to say, there's a lot of women in your country on death row. Did you research?
Thank you. We will respond to questions when I ask the speaker to just come back. Make a note of the questions. Do you want to respond, or anybody want to respond to that?
What was that question? You know, when you've done that research with your therapy and holistic, was that with young women on death row in your country?
In the USA?
I'm not aware of any research that's been done with prisoners on death row, men or women. What I do know is that there's a program at San Quentin where there's a lot of men on death row of the effectiveness of yoga in prison, and they're having very good results with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Say your name and then ask the question or comment.
Yeah, I'm Danielle Williamson from the Howard League for Penal Reform, which I'm sure if anybody knows, we quite rightfully share many of the speakers' views that we believe prison is the last resort and the least suitable place for most of the majority of women in conflict and girls in conflict with the criminal justice system in this country. But just more of a practical question, what I'm not sure about, or what I'm still not clear on, is that what are Kazuri actually doing? Which women are they working with? Where are you working? How many women is that with, or what kind of provision you already have? And that's something I'm not clear on yet. And I'd be really interested, for example, we're holding a girls' inquiry where we're going to be looking at taking evidence nationally from projects, programs and organisations that are doing exactly the kind of things and the approaches that you would be taking. I guess I'm just interested to hear what you're doing.
Well, the target group is this churning women between 18 and 25, so first and second time prison sentences, low index crimes, although we are looking at, someone said that I had excluded violent women while I hadn't. I think everything needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Our pilot project, we are looking at 2 boroughs, which should be up and running in the next 3 months. It is a residential program. We showed it to a couple of magistrates and a district judge who said, a lot of people are going to decide to do the prison sentence instead of doing the treatment because it is really intense. It's an 8-hour day. 4 hours of that is volunteering, 4 hours of that is therapy and community service and yoga and stuff. So we are looking at running a pilot program, a very intensive pilot program very soon in a local prison. And strangely enough, another project that we've been working on sort of tangentially for men, how strange is that, is sort of taking off in a much faster way. But the women are always going to be the hardcore, it's just ugly. Criminal women is just ugly, isn't it? So we've had resistance. We're overcoming that resistance with meetings like this and getting support from people like you. The Prison Reform Trust has also been very helpful. Young Foundation, who are here, have been really great. Talking to the Ministry of Justice Women's Policy Unit, all sorts of people at NOMS, Foundation. So really gathering information, and our program is there, it's ready to go. It's now about putting it in place, putting the pieces together. But basically it is women who may have committed 16 or 30 or 50 offences, but it's all this low risk. For our own insurance, because we're working a residential program, there are issues with insurance. Can't have arsonists, sex offenders, or very aggravated violent women who continue to offend in violent ways. If it's a one-off thing, I think we have to look at it. So does that answer your question?
Thank you. I think the speakers will be here for a little while afterward, so if there is any question or any query, you can carry on. Just.
I'm Jo Whitehouse. I'm from Clean Break, which is a women-only organisation. We work with women affected by the criminal justice system. We're a theatre company, an education company, a new writing company. There's 3 points that I want to make, and I don't know if everyone in the room is going to agree with all of them, but I want to share them anyway. Nobody has mentioned the fact that women and children have been proved to be disproportionately affected by the cuts that are currently going on. In my own organisation, we've had to cut the Access programme. We had a hugely successful Access programme whereby women with offending histories, with traumatic histories, could do the Access and then go on to university. And we've had a very successful flow of women coming from abused, traumatic histories, going on, getting degrees, and I'm sure everyone in this room can appreciate that higher education and a degree is a way out of poverty. We have now had to stop that because of our funding. Also, there's been a huge drop in funding for higher education in the arts, so that's another reason why we've stopped that programme. In addition to that, programmes like Shaw Start, I've worked with young people from deprived communities and grown up in a deprived community all my life. Programmes like Shaw Start, which my own son attends, are also being dismantled. And as a youth worker who has 15 plus years of experience working with young offenders, abused children, all the rest of it, I know that Shaw Start was the answer to some of these problems. In my view, prevention is better than cure. I would rather work with the under 5s and prevent them going through the sort of abuse we've seen these women suffer, because later on it is much harder to put women back together. The third point I want to make is that I know a lot of women, I know children, I know young people, I have personal friends who were abused as children, and the justice system in this country I think is woefully inadequate when it comes to actually bringing the perpetrators to justice. There was a case recently where 2 men who basically ran a multi-million-pound internet porn, child abuse business, each received 18 months for their part in running that, in abusing hundreds of children and perpetrating those images of abuse that we then know go on to create the next generation of offenders. We all work with these people. We know how damaging it is. We might have personal experience of it, which means we know how damaging it is. But I'm just wondering when this country is actually going to start punishing the perpetrators of child abuse rather than the girls, the young people that I work with, who we all know the Daily Mail hates. They also seem to hate paedophiles. They don't seem to understand that one is related to the other. And I've worked with girls who have had the hugest sentences for minor crimes, but their rapists and their abusers have never been brought to justice.
I think your points, I personally agree with most of them, but Sulan wants to say something. And we will have another debate on cuts. I oppose the cuts, so I am fully with you.
I think I want to respond as a clinician. I think you make a really important point. And this patient I presented, April, her father was convicted for his crimes, and he spent an entire year in jail for torturing her for 12 years. Okay? This, as a therapist, I could see, and we talked about this and analyzed this, directly led, this was a violation of her social contract with society. The fact that her first suicide attempt happened when he was released from jail, but she also lost all faith in society and trust in the justice system. So at that point, why not break laws if perpetrators? So we are, by not addressing and holding and punishing perpetrators' feet to the fire, we are actually creating an environment where people feel injustice and they're lost in the social contract and much more likely to commit crimes as they age.
Thank you.
Can I just say one here? Because this is very important. I know Clean Break and you do wonderful work. The reason it don't come to it, because a lot of the judges and a lot of the people in power are the actual clients who buy that sort of stuff, okay? So they don't want to nick their own, and that's the bottom line of it. And until we have it exposed about who's in the deals, when you damage a child, if I go and rob a bank, they give you 20 years, right? One molested child will get 18 months. Sex offences can't go. You've got to have proportion. It's not about, this country is geared up about how much wealth you live. It's not about how much damage you do to the victim. And until they change that, and the reason they don't do that is because they go into schools. We've seen it with the churches where there's been child sex abuse covered up. You go into children's home, sex abuse covered up. All right, why is it covered up? Because the abusers are in very high-ranking places, and it means turning their own over, and they don't do that.
Thank you. Good.
My name is Zeba Arif. I'm a forensic psychiatric nurse. So obviously, whatever Kazuri advocates is very close to my heart because I work with a lot of these women who have experienced trauma and abuse in their lives and have to get over not only what they have experienced, but try and get their lives together so that they can be discharged from hospital. What I was thinking while I was listening to all the presentations is that how important it is to empower these women and to make them feel that they are in control of their lives. And I think that is extremely resource intensive. And what you would need is actually many, many Susans to be able to do that. And my question is, has Kazuri considered the criteria that you would be, you would actually look at for your staff, for example, people who would be delivering these sort of programs, and what sort of supervision would they have? And what sort of
I was just speaking with one of the potential providers of services about this very issue this afternoon, and we both agree that very strong hands-on supervision of the clinicians, because there's this thing called vicarious traumatization when we work with intense populations, and it stirs a lot of stuff within the clinicians and the milieu staff. So the program clinically needs to be very carefully designed to support and hold the staff and to educate them. We have a lot of, apparently, I'm learning about the system here, there's a lot of good psychodynamic psychotherapy, but psychodynamic psychotherapy has been inadequate traditionally to address the issues of trauma. I'm a trauma specialist, my book is about the treatment of trauma, and this is the training that we're going to bring to this program is trauma specific. training for this population. So it's very much at the forefront of my mind as I'm working with FARA, for sure, yeah.
I don't think it's so much about labels and doctors and having numbers and letters behind your name. Research shows that it's actually the clinician having empathy and compassion, and that's when treatment is successful, rather than you can be a, you know,
and that is why I asked about criteria, and exactly, and
yeah,
that's
but
why
I think it's
asked.
much more about compassion. I think Susan's whole approach is a medical approach, but it's also a very integrated, holistic approach.
It's about having those personal qualities to bring to the...
Thank you. Speak to them later on. And can I tell people, because I know you have been sitting here for almost 2 hours now, in next 20 minutes we will finish this question and answer, if you don't mind. You here, say the name and then ask the question or comment.
I'm Neil Smith. I commend the work that's being done by Kazuri, and I'm very interested in, as somebody who's had several years' experience of working within the field, both in a practical basis and policy making. What I'm interested in though, when I look at the lineup you have and the people who are assisting Kazuri and actually setting this up, you're in quite a strong position in terms of having people who are involved in the field, but also those who are involved in finance and various, you know, strategic aspects of society. And I'm wondering how much you're going to draw upon that in actually setting the foundations of the type of work you're going to deliver with the woman. Because for years we've spoken, I work for the probation service, for years we've spoken about what works, but often we're very limited in the aspects of what works we look at, and then even when we discover what works, we're not necessarily applying it. For example, I did a talk about a month ago on black women offenders, and we often see data churned out about black women as being, you know, overrepresented in the criminal justice system, but it stops at a certain level, and year after year you bring out the same information, similar to the statistics that were brought here, which are important. But what we really want to look at is what is the stuff that creates the change. You presented on some beautiful work. Is it Susan?
Yes.
Your name. At the same time, we know that that type of work is very resource intensive, and it's wonderful, and there are particular individuals who need that. But how are we capturing the masses? And so I want to ask, first of all, with the power that you have on your board, as it were, what steps are being taken to engage with the media? Because we know, we all come here, many of us are practitioners, you're almost preaching to the converted. How do we get the media on side? Because we often know that with our governments, they're making decisions based on what they feel they need to do in order to pander to a misinformed public. In terms of your vision for the future, I would like to ask, how broad is that? Because one of my frustrations as somebody who's worked with female offenders in particular, is that often the vision for the future for reintegration and rehabilitation is very narrow. Okay, it's great for people to be trained in music and painting and decorating, but there are other things that people can do. What about accountancy? And with these organisations that are represented, I'm hoping that you're going to sort of hold them to task in offering apprenticeships as well. Yeah. Obviously for risk assessed and hand-picked offenders who are up for the challenge, but I think these are the things that really start to make a difference. Because the reality is, there are many more people in our societies who have criminal records than we would all maybe care to think. It's not as much of a strange thing. And finally, I would just like to say, black women offenders in particular, if you're looking at really making a difference, and we know there's a lot of them, Colin spoke about foreign nationals, are you willing to put your money where your mouth is, even in terms of commissioning research that's going to really help us to set up ways of working that are going to make a difference for that group? Because one of this, I think it was you, Lady from Women in Prison, who was speaking about the various types of discrimination and how they stack up to really help people down. And you know, with black women, there's the poverty, there's the gender, there's the ethnicity, add sexuality, and it goes on and on. So I think there's a few challenges there that if Kazuri are really committed to making a change, I think it's how they're going to leverage on the support they have in this inception stage.
Can I just go on that? You're saying to Kazuri that they should fund this research. We're taxpayers. Right, the government should be funding this research, not private investors. Okay, let's get it right. I mean, when you've got Jack Straw, who had seen on his computer, cost us 11 million now, that didn't work, and he said to me, probably we've all been had over by sweet-talking computer salesmen, not for 11 million quid I had. So I think the probation service has got a lot to answer for them. Okay? Probation service needed, instead of wasting the money, and it did waste money, right? I'm talking as an ex-offender and somebody who runs a charity who doesn't take government money. We refuse to take government money, right? With the money they've wasted, they could have actually done that research and should be doing that research, because if they really care about rehabilitation and not retribution, is which they really care about, then they should be investing in groups like research, in groups like Kazuri, in groups like Clean Break, in groups like other people around this table, instead of giving it to the cowboys who we know like glossy literature, skimming the money off the top and hand it down to those. So when it comes to people like Marilyn, when it comes to people like Mickey, who's running a project, when it comes to Kazuri Arms, they get the small end of the brush because it's all been skimmed off the top. I think if we're going to talk about value for money and we're going to talk about accountability, then the government itself has got to be able to account.
Thank you. Yes.
Can you just add, sorry,
Sorry.
Just add to that. We have got work in this whole payment by results model, and it's all about the outcome is work, the outcome is employment. You get a payment when you put a person in employment, you get a payment when they're sustained in employment for X weeks, and then X weeks, and then X months. What Tony demonstrated is a really brilliant model which engages the ex-offender to stay unoffending. It's a financially incentivized model. And we're not just talking to, painting and decorating companies. We're talking to LSET in London, which is a skills academy. We're talking to people who really have jobs that they can offer. It's not just, go and work in Marks and Spencer's. It's go and work for the Media Trust, learn how to make a film, learn to get behind the camera, do the stuff you really wanted to do with writing. If you want to be a co-counselor, there's obviously CRB issues there that I hope are going to be changed. Ken Clark has made moves towards that, about disclosure and stuff, but it's about empowering. So what do you want to do with your life? Not what do I want you to do with your life, but what do you want to do with your life, and how can we assist in getting you there? And if you just want to say something about Kazuri Works, I think that's really
okay. Yes, lady, can I, before I ask you, because Bobby is leaving, can I also tell you that Leah has got a few books here, and if anybody wants to pick up the book, she will be available to sign it for you tonight. Yes.
I'm Barbara Tree, I'm head of the Women's Team in Norms. And I feel obliged just to correct one or two things. I've been in the prison service since 1983, longer than Colin Moses, and I've seen many, many changes, including in the women's prison system. I've worked for just that end the last 7 years. It isn't the same service exactly as it is for men. Women's prisons have changed a lot. I mean, there's still lots of residue things that are the same. There are bars and there are all sorts of restrictions. On the other hand, women's prisons have developed loads of things that are specifically geared towards their rehabilitation. For instance, services for women that have been involved in domestic violence, looking at solutions for abuse and ways of properly managing women differently who have experienced self-harm. So a lot of work there's been done, and it may be that Colin and Bobby may not know about that, but if you look at the response to the Corston report and the 2-year-on report by Baroness Corston, you'll see that even she would say that things have come on. It's not to say it's perfect, it certainly isn't, all right? But that is the case. And if you want to know how women's prisons are managed, if you go to Prison Service Order Women Prisoners 4800, available on the net, you'll see that women's prisons are meant to do something completely different from male prisons. All right, so I'd say that to start with.
Can I just say before I leave, because I've got to leave here, right? You close down Crookham Wood Prison and you move women far away from their children. You can't justify that.
That's not true, actually. Most of the women in Crookham Wood were relocated to Downview and Send.
Yeah. How many in Downview? How many did Crookham Wood hold?
They all went, apart one or two, to Downview and Send and the London prisons, and that was the area they came.
But they got moved out later.
And the same for more.
But they got moved out later. But they got moved out later.
Thank you for your comment, obviously. Any other question?
So I was going to make a point. There's millions of people, thousands of people involved in both probation services and NOMS, and in all the voluntary organisations that are here, that have masses of experience in managing these very same issues. How are Kazuri going to make those links and not compete with existing providers, not trying to reinvent the wheel, if you like? Because obviously, everybody in here is committed to making things work better. So how are you going to work with those rather than try and invent things from scratch, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Can I just comment and then I can tell you what to say? I don't think we are reinventing, but I don't think the word has been invented yet. Probation and norms, if I can be very frank, have I think, interesting agendas. Leah's book has been banned from certain prisons because it's considered
That's not true. We distribute it with a health warning, not to practice give it to women who are self-harming.
Well, no, we've been told that it's not allowed in style and there's problems getting it into other prisons as well. This is a book that was written by women.
In fact, we distributed it, I seem to remember, so that you didn't have to pay postage.
Well, anyway, we've been told
Let's
banned
talk
in style.
to them later on if
Okay,
they are.
but I think also a treatment program like Missouri has not been, there has never been within a prison setting something that addresses employment, resettlement, education, skills training, mental health issues, detox. There's never been, there are therapeutic communities in prisons, I think there's one in Sen, but they don't have the network, they don't have the Tapan and Maggies who've got incredible contacts to put people into skills. They don't have the David Gaines who own colleges all over the world, I think, actually, who can actually tailor-make solutions and education programs for women. This is not a one-size-fits-all. We're not trying to fit women into something just so that we can say, there, we've got you a job. It's a completely different approach. It's an approach that hasn't been tried before. And there's a lot of problems. Norms and probation don't talk to each other. They do not address. There was a whole paper written by Agnes McNeil in probation, which addresses the problems between norms, probation, and the way that women with mental health issues are treated. And it is a disaster. It's never been looked at. It's never been dealt with. It's just, let's push it away. We won't look at it. It's ugly. Someone else can deal with it.
Thank you very much. Let's ask another question. You have said what you wanted to. I think that you can speak to later on or somebody. Any other question? Yes, young man. I'm very pleased. There are two men who want to ask questions. All right, that's great. Yes, first you, young man.
My question is really, I would be interested to have a sort of better understanding. I think the lady from the Howard League asked quite a good question about really what it is you're trying to do on a practical level. I mean, we've come to a presentation, and it seems to me we've sat for quite a while, there's been a fairly range number of kind of disjointed views about a whole range of issues. What I've come away with being not really fully understanding still, and I'm not sure after this amount of time I particularly want it, is what exactly you're planning to do. And I don't know if anyone else feels that way about the nature of the presentation, but I still don't have a clue really what it is you're
Well, I think it's actually quite straightforward. It's a residential rehabilitation program for women ex-offenders under the age of 25 who continue to reoffend because there is no statutory provision for them. I think we covered that.
I think you might be asking about programmatic elements. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it would be nice to go into some of the detail after and I think
right, some of the programmatic elements include individual therapy, group psychotherapy, some of the holistic, so possibly yoga, which would be provided through volunteers. There's a program called Street Yoga that's going to be coming here to train people. They're coming to Belfast and they're going to come here. It's a beautiful program that doesn't cost a cent. There's going to be some talk about acupuncture and massage therapy, things that the U.S. military is doing that we have really solid data on that's actually working very well. And it really goes beyond the scope of this talk. But if you want to see me afterwards, I'd be happy to go into more depth with you about it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Young man, there.
No, I'm just quite interested sitting here and listening to that side of the room and certain comments from this side of the room. Obviously, there seems to be a two-sided argument here. But my overall opinion, hearing both sides, is that one side is stuck as a huge animal, a huge beast. And the beast is caged, it doesn't know where to go. And so it seems to have an innate resentment for anything that seems to be spoken that they don't understand. And basically I think what Kazuri's got to do is Kazuri's got to run a pilot project on its own resources to show certain individuals and certain departments in government what you're going to do. And until you do that, you're going to have people who are going to question your methods or your motives. So I commend you, I'm here to support you, and I'm sure we show the people over here that this may be a new method of working and something for the future. And let's think about things in the future rather than stay where we are or where we've been. Because I've been there as well.
and it doesn't work.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other burning question? Oh, yes.
Not a question, but just
Comment.
Susan for explaining why restorative justice works. It's something that's almost intuitive, and people haven't been very successful at articulating how effective it is and why it's working. And you've done it for the very first time today. And the other thing is, what's exciting about England in the youth this day, the under 18 this day, there is research absolutely mirroring your work on brain injury, traumatic brain injury, and the effects of brain injury and PTSD on kids who have been witnesses or subject to major trauma, and they are ending up in jail. And that's just coming up, bubbling up to the surface. So you're absolutely on the money, and if you can just get the whole thing pulled together, like Farah's trying to do, if you can put it all together, work in a holistic way with these people, women, children, we can find a solution.
Well, and something for you guys to research if you want to is Bessel van der Kolk, who's widely considered the world expert on PTSD, put together a diagnosis that they're trying very hard to get included in the new DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual. It's coming out in 2013 called Developmental Trauma Disorder, that addresses that children who are raised in a traumatic environment have permanent brain and body changes, and that these things really do need to be addressed at the level of just physicality. So yes, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. The last question from young lady in second hand.
It was just a quick comment really, and more of a suggestion, and it was based on what you'd already said about the criteria for meeting or being able to engage with the programme. I guess it's just compare that, the low level offences, the insurance issues, which I know of because I've managed housing hostels for people in conflict with the law before. I know that's an issue in terms of high level sexual offences, arson, etc. But considering the dynamic and unique approach and the investment you want to give, surely those types of offenders are going to be the most likely to benefit and to really engage with